It has once again come to my attention that people don't understand China, specifically China US relations here recently, what happened under the Clinton administration, prior to that, the first Bush administration, and under Nixon with the so called opening up of China. People will like to predict, oh, World War III is going to happen. China's going to take Taiwan any day now, any hour. Just look at the South China Sea. What's going on there? Look at the peninsula. Look at the Gulf. Look at whatever they will say. Well, if you want to understand China's position towards the United States, you must understand Sun Tzu, The Art of War. The most popular quote from that book, I think, is the most useful for our purpose of understanding what's going on in Trump and Xi Jinping relations and expectations for the years ahead. What with the tariffs on China coming back up again, as well as Canada and Mexico. We talked yesterday about the importance of tariffs, how tariffs brought us the Gilded Age, and they will bring us the Golden Age. Prosperity not for the few, but for the many. It's called we do a little populism. The quote from Art of War I'd like you to keep in mind is, win without fighting. Now, that is a condensed, too long didn't read of the full quote. That is a bit more artistic and archaic than the way I just shared it now. But if you want to understand China's position towards Taiwan, the government wants to win Taiwan without fighting. The same way they won Hong Kong without fighting. Now, there was a number of skirmishes, a little bit of conflict, socially speaking, but they got Hong Kong without fighting. China wants to win, and has already won, a significant strategic economic advantage over the United States and all countries in its hemisphere, and also in South America and Africa, parts of the Middle East, anywhere and everywhere they can get a foothold, stranglehold. They will, but they will do so without fighting. If you're familiar with their Belt and Road Initiative, it is China's way of dominating anything and everything in their geographic path that they can reach. It's a way of bringing the world to China right back, extracting resources. It's a new colonialism that doesn't bother the left because they're not white people doing it. Now, of course, it's far worse than European colonialism because there's no sense of duty to the poor, to the sick, to the undereducated, to women and girls that very many Christians had when they would go about these colonizing adventures, when they would, for example, see unclothed little kids running around everywhere, no parents in sight, in the wild, looking thirsty, hungry, and haggard. And the religious people would take care of them. And this, of course, was recast as European indoctrination and indigenous erasure. Of course, nothing like that happened. If you've ever read any of those books that purport that from the left-wing perspective, they don't show any evidence or facts. They simply state. I was at a museum here locally recently, flipping through. There was this Indigenous Peoples Day celebration there, and me, being me, thought I would take a peep. And there were some books and literature laying out, and I began flipping through one, and there were no references. It was a sort of indigenous history of the Western frontier, and there were no references. Simply assertions. And it was things like the heteronormative white supremacist patriarchal system of oppression and the indigenous people's wisdom and other ways of knowing. What? None of it, of course, is based on facts. And this, ironically, gives the communists of China cover, because that is a far left, a radical left-wing government. And leftists tend not to eat their own until they're very hungry. So we're not yet at that point, but perhaps we will one day. I wrote the book on it back there, The Secret History of Communist Revolutions, with Jack Posobiec, co-author. Coming back to this right here, The objective is to win without fighting. Now, the United States can do that. Anytime you are in a relationship, you have to understand, are you in a good faith situation or in a bad faith situation? The United States cannot treat China like it's a good faith situation, like it's a bad faith situation. As we talked about yesterday, the cost of made in China, meaning it was cheaply produced, cheaply manufactured, and cheaply sold in this country, wiped out our working class. It pulled the bottom out, holding up, containing the middle class, keeping it safe. And now the lower portions of that have been in free fall into addiction, ruin, and mass unaliving of themselves every single day. That is not what makes America great. Tariffs can bring a little bit of victory to the people who need it the most so that we can have dignity for the working man and his family in this country. Once again, that is why we supported Donald Trump for president. We're going to create a golden age, and we're going to do so with tariffs. We're going to win without fighting. There will be no World War III under Donald J. Trump. There will be no more war in Ukraine. There will be no extreme conflict between the Israel people and the folks of the various Arab countries. Not going to happen. It's done. So my best advice to you is think about what it is that your biggest dreams are that you want to accomplish, and do everything you can to get them done in the next 4 years. From January 20th, 2025 to the very same day of 2029, you have 4 years. Now you have just under 2 months of preparation for that. What I noticed during the first Trump administration is that all business was on easy mode, specifically B2B and B2E, selling products, goods, services regionally, locally, also nationally, and even internationally. Everyone wanted to buy from Americans. Americans wanted to buy from Americans. Even with the tariffs, it didn't matter because everyone wanted access to the United States. We're about to experience that again. And if you are moaning and groaning and whining and complaining about Trump's victory and Project 2025 and all this hoax business, you got another thing coming. If you also think it's going to be okay for criminal illegal aliens to stay where they're at, you also got another thing coming. I'm so stoked for Tom Homan as the pick because the illegal immigration battle, that is a war we can win without fighting. Simply penalizing businesses for hiring illegal immigrants, meaning enforcing existing immigration law, that's what's so bizarre about all of this. The executive branch is subject to existing laws, and yet it hasn't been obeying those laws, and it has in fact been working actively against those laws. What with CBP One app, what with giving free money, free housing, free food, free debit cards, free smartphones to the illegals. End all of it. Stop rewarding what ought to be punished. And that alone might be something like winning without fighting. Once the first small batch of criminals, that is, those who are known to have committed some sort of an assault or a murder, and they snuck into the United States from another country, and they are actual convicted criminals and asylees, not like safety asylum, but like they broke out of or were let loose from a literal asylum in a foreign country. Once those first images and videos make the headlines and go viral on social media and elsewhere, millions of people are going to leave. Like, I do not want that to be me. I do not want my face to be in that video that just got 38.5 million views. Not going to be me. I'm out. Afuera. That's going to be what happens. It's going to be wonderful. And I want you to be best positioned for that. So if you are thinking about starting a business in America, if you're thinking about if you're in another country and you want to do business with Americans, best get ready because we are going to be unlocking prosperity we haven't seen in more than 100 years. It's going to be incredible. The standard of living for Americans rose the highest during the Gilded Age. Unlike any previous period, people went from, if you or a horse couldn't get you there, you weren't getting there, to you could ride a train, plane, or automobile to get what you wanted. Imagine that. You had kerosene, you had candles. Now you have electric cities, appliances. The United States, thanks to the Gilded Age rather, of tariffs, brought us from a third world country to the most powerful and prosperous country ever to have existed in 40 years. Wow. That's the future. And it's going to take us 4 years. Yeah. You could say I'm excited.